Hello chess fans, Zach Wilson, Hood County Chess Club here, continuing our series on Attacking the King, where we're looking at a series of popular and famous and historical checkmating patterns and checkmating techniques. Today we're looking at one that can be traced back as far as 1497 when Juan Ramirez Lucena published a few chess works. And then again, I have some notes here. Joachim Greco, who was probably Europe's best player, strongest player in the 17th century. He lived in the early 1600s. He wrote actually a treatise on chess that became sort of a chess student's manual for the next 150 years. And in these early writings, we discover a checkmate pattern called the Smothered Mate. Let's get started. So we can see here on the screen that black has been checkmated by white's knight. And we can see that right here. And the idea of the smothered mate is that black is smothered by his own pieces. So we can see here that black has no runaway squares because he's blocked in. And we deliver the checkmate with the knight because the knight is the only piece that can jump over the other pieces. So if we look at the smothered mate in action from a similar example from Lucena in the late 1400s, early 1500s, see if the internet wants to help me here. There we go. We have these positions set up, by the way, using lichess.org. That's lichess.org. What a great website. Become a member and use their software. Play games against other players around the world. Okay, so here we are looking at a position that Lucena recommended. What we can see is that we have our queen attacking a space against the king. And we also have a knight that is ready to jump in and attack the king. So, very simple move here. Our knight hops in and delivers the check. And the king has no choice but to step out. And what we can immediately notice is that white now has set up a discovered attack or a discovered check. A discovery is when this piece, which is blocking the current check or the current threat, chooses to move out of the way, such as this move here, revealing the attack upon the target, here the king. Now what's neat about this is that because a check has occurred, this knight can safely move into an otherwise threatened position. Black cannot capture this knight simply because he's in check and has to deal with it. Now hopefully you can see immediately, especially if you've been following our series on attacking the king, that black's king does not want to step over onto the f8 square. If he does step over onto the f8 square, I hope you can see the winning move for white. Checkmate with the kiss of death. The queen is protected by the knight and delivering the checkmate. So black, seeing this, has to make the only other option, which is to step back into the corner. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out the answer to this position on what you should do. But the answer is queen delivers a check protected by the knight. And the reason this is important is that the king cannot capture this queen because he can't put himself in check from this knight. So black only has one option to escape the checkmate, and that is to capture the queen. And now you can see the position unfold, smothered checkmate. Okay, so moving along, in one of our previous videos recently, we talked about the Arabian mate. The Arabian mate being a combination of the rook and the knight. And we can see here that right now, this rook is covering these runaway squares. And so we want to come in and find a way to cause a checkmate. So white moves his knight into position, and the threat here is that the rook could come down and deliver the checkmate, protected by this knight. Okay, well, unfortunately for white, the Arabian mate is not available because black has this rook that could capture in response. Now, the other threat here is that white has the ability to let the knight come over and deliver the check instead. And the rook covering the escape squares would also be a checkmate, which we looked at in the video about the Arabian mate, ways that rooks and knights work together. So black needs to defend both checkmates. So rook to f8. He's still protecting this square, and now he's protecting this square. Okay. So one of the things we've learned throughout the series on attacking the king is that you can use one checkmate pattern to threaten a checkmate, forcing a response that reveals an opportunity to use another of these checkmate patterns to deliver the win. So this is what white does. White uses the pattern of the Arabian mate. The knight is protecting the rook. The rook is delivering the checkmate and covering the runaway squares. And so black is forced to respond by capturing this rook. And once that occurs, smothered checkmate. You can see that this king is blocked in by his own pieces. I suppose it's not a traditional smother because we do have this pawn covering a runaway square, but it's using these two ideas to create a checkmate. Now, smothered mates aren't just at the end of the game. Smothered mates happen in the beginning of the game, and this is why you see a lot of people studying opening theory to avoid certain traps. Let's look at a few examples. Here we have the English opening, and this game ends very, very quickly. So we have the English opening, and the knight jumps in, and checkmate. So white made a couple of really bad moves, and black took advantage. Something to note is that they're following opening principles, attacking the center, developing a piece, which also attacks the center. Okay, great. Attacking the center and preparing for this move here. Okay, but he's moved both of these pawns, which has created a hole in his position. Black sees the hole and breaks opening principle to move the same piece twice. Okay, white should notice here that the threat is the weakness he created, followed by a check. The only thing protecting that hole is this bishop, and white makes the mistake of closing that access. Checkmate, smothered. All right, let's look at the Caro-Kann opening. This is a very popular trap. It happens more often than not in blitz games. So typical e4 opening. This is the Caro-Kann. These are all mainline moves so far. And now white makes a curious move, moving queen and blocking in his bishop. And the reason he's done that is that he's got an attack and a pin against this king, and the king is currently smothered. So black needs to be careful here on his next move, and black makes a mistake. This is why you study opening theory. If you're a Caro-Kann defense player, you need to have this memorized so that you don't accidentally move knight to f6. Can you see the smothered mate? Checkmate. And you think, but Zach, can't I just take this knight? No, you can't. Excuse me. The queen is pinning the pawn to the king. It cannot attack, and therefore a tricky smothered mate. And that was only 6 moves into the game. So these traps you have to be aware of. Smothered mates are great traps in the opening. Here's the Scandinavian defense. This is where we just simply attack the center immediately, right out of the first move. And we see a few typical moves in the Scandinavian. The idea that black is going to try and protect this pawn while white tries to attack this pawn. See, each move is revolving around attacking and defending this pawn. Again, more moves. Here comes the attack, and black makes a mistake. He should have continued with the threats. He's got 2 pieces here, even though white has 2 defenders here. The mistake was the same mistake that the Caro-Kann player made in the previous example. Moving here, closing in his king. You can see that this queen has got the pin on the pawn and smothered checkmate. In the Budapest opening, this is a queen's pawn opening. Looks like we're opening with an Indian defense here. The Budapest is when black immediately attacks the center here. Normally in opening theory, this would lead to a Nimzo Indian or a Queen's Indian defense. This would lead to a King's Indian or possibly a Grunfeld defense. This one could lead to the Benoni or the Benko Gambit. There's all kinds of interesting moves here. But this one is the Budapest, immediately attacking the center and offering up a free pawn because it's undefended but disrupting the center. Personally, when I encounter this, I actually just move this pawn forward and reject the gambit. But here the gambit is accepted, and black's able to attack that pawn, trying to rip open the center. Again, the attack's coming. All traditional moves. Ooh, it looks like black is trying this pin. Interesting. Okay, the mistake by white. Here it comes. Oh, he shouldn't have taken the bishop. Smothered checkmate. As soon as black took this pawn and is threatening the same thing as the Caro-Kann with this pin, white should have been paying attention. White did not pay attention. White probably should have used one of these pieces to trade off this knight and this knight when he recaptures. But instead, he got greedy and took the bishop and smothered checkmate. The Italian game, which is really popular with beginning players, beginning with these moves here. Of course, white is attacking the f7 square there in the Italian game, and then black returns the favor with his bishop. Okay, all basic opening theory moves. Kings are getting to safety. Both sides are attacking the center. All right. Moving our pieces in traditional fashion. You can see all the threats that are being made. And here we have an interesting attack. The queen and the knight are both attacking these two squares, and black has additional support. This f2 pawn is very, very weak. So what can we do to take advantage of that? Well, white attempts to bring a defender against this queen. The problem is all he really did was open the access for the bishop here, and the knight, and the queen, and the only thing defending it is the lonely king, so he can't do anything to it. Go ahead and pause the video, see how you should respond here. Queen captures. King has no choice but to step in. If you remember Lucena's position at the beginning of the video, you know that the queen can sacrifice herself. And after the capture, the smothered mate. And just as a point of reference here, it wouldn't have mattered if we captured with our knight. Still a smothered mate. All right, so pop quiz. It's time for you to find the mate. I want you to pause the video and ask yourself, how can white win here? How can you force a win? Welcome back from pausing the video. I hope you found using one checkmate pattern to get the other. If black's queen was not here, this would be a checkmate, as white's knight protects the queen, and that would be an obvious checkmate. The only way out is for the black queen to capture, and now I hope you see it, smothered checkmate. All right, how about one more pop quiz? This one's in the middle of a game. I'm gonna move my cursor off the screen there. When you pause this video, I want you to really assess the situation. First, look at every possible check and see what that leads you to. Look at every possible capture. What are the things that you're threatening that you could capture? And when you're thinking about the captures, you can also think about what we call violent moves. Violent moves are when you give away material. Like in the previous example, here's a great example of a violent move. We'll back it up to the beginning. A violent move is you're trading your queen for a pawn. You gave up your queen for a pawn. That's a violent move. But a violent move was very forcing, which allowed the checkmate. So when we go back here, I want you to be looking for those threats and those violent moves and any check possibilities. Take your time, maybe give it 10 minutes. I'll wait. Okay, I'm done waiting because you paused the video and now you're back. All right, I hope you found a lot of these threats. We can see a potential violent move with the rook. Okay. We can see a potential violent move or a capture here where the rook gives itself up for the bishop because the only thing protecting that bishop here, we would lose the rook for the bishop, and that's called losing the exchange. But maybe that's a good idea if it lures this queen away. Okay. Hopefully you noticed the battery here where these two pieces that the queen protected by the bishop really would like to come here and say checkmate. Unfortunately, it does have two defenders on this position. Hopefully you noticed the threat of this knight hopping in and attacking key squares in the position. For instance, if both this bishop was missing and this queen were missing, then this knight could simply hop into a smothered mate. Okay. We also have access down here through an X-ray attack of this bishop if this pawn were to move or if this queen were to move. So wow, a lot of tools at White's disposal here. So what did White do? White captures the bishop, and we have a lot of choices here. If the queen captures like she did in the game that was played here, what this leads to is the knight is now forking the undefended queen and supporting this rook coming in for checkmate. So this knight move is threatening a queen and a checkmate. The only saving grace here is to get the queen back into defending, and now we take it anyways. Again, the idea of using one checkmate to achieve another. So it's a violent move, it's a rook sacrifice, the only defense is here, and now you see the smothered mate. Well, a savvy chess player might ask, after we've taken the bishop, what are Black's other options? Well, the first one is, what if the Black king moved here to f7? Let's back it up one move. Right now, the queen is in danger. Where can the queen go? Well, covered by this rook, covered by the knight, covered by the rook, covered by the pawns, covered by a rook. Okay, she only has two choices outside of capturing the rook, which we already saw leads to an endgame. So if she tries to go here, let's look at some of our options. I could still take the violent sacrifice, and now look at this knight. Check, fork, and defense all at the same time. But because it is a check, and this rook is patrolling here, the king can only move backwards, which leads to the queen being captured again with check. And the king only has one option. Okay. And so now we just look at this and think, well, surely this is a one game. We've taken the queen off the board that was here. The king has been exposed. We have a lot of different options here still with this amazing attack, maybe even repositioning the queen over here. Of course, we've got this rook, we've got this knight, lots of beautiful rainbow colors here. So that's obviously losing. Okay, so then what if instead the queen ran away? Well, I think we can take a look here at all the amazing options. We can easily get a win here because the queen has been displaced away from defense. And remember, this rook captured a bishop. So if you count the material, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces, and all of White's pieces are coming in against the king very, very quickly. This guy's not even in the defense. This guy's way outside. Surely you could find a win here. So I hope that helps you out, remembering that the smothered mate is just simply the concept of attacking the king where he has no runaway squares. Remember, you are what you repeat, so I would encourage you to watch this video again and again, study each of those positions, find the traps in the openings that you enjoy playing, play them over a physical board, not always on the computer, because when you're in a competition, you'll be playing with physical pieces and it does look and feel different, and practice with a friend. I hope you'll visit us on Facebook, Hood County Chess Club. Click the like button to keep up with local events. Until next time, we'll see you real soon.